G'day everybody. I thought we would move on from advertising to something slightly different, but again it's something in the book. We're going to skip ahead slightly and look at television, whether it should be on or off. Again, this is a comprehension exercise from the book that I'm doing. There'll be another video up with read-through on it, so you'll be able to follow along with that. But for the meantime, let me give you an introduction to television. Now, what is television? Most of you have got one, but probably not all of you anymore. A lot of you have probably gone over to monitors. Television is dying off, and honestly, good riddance. Television is just the worst. In England, we used to call it the boob tube, and that had nothing to do with female breasts. It was because boob was a slang word for an idiot. At other times, it was called the idiot lantern. It's been called a lot of insulting things because it really is dumb media. It's not just dumbed down, it's designed to keep you dumb. It's basically a box of propaganda in your living room. And that's what it's always been. It's always been a brilliant way of making you pay to be propagandized at. And they say television is programming for a good reason. It's you that's being programmed. And all these things are true. Television is not out for your benefit. And you can see the way it works, see the kind of programming there is. Now, it's changed a lot since I was a kid. In England especially, we had the BBC, BBC One and BBC Two. BBC One was the mainstream stuff. That was the dramas, the comedies, the stuff that your family could watch. That was where documentaries would live. That was where all the best programming was. Then we'd have BBC Two, which was the minority programming. Now that would be for in-depth news analysis, it would be for experimental comedies, it would be for stuff that wasn't normal. And it was all made in-house. So the BBC used to make everything for English people. So it wouldn't have any media bias, it wouldn't have anything aimed at foreign audiences. It would be purely British television made for British people. And it worked. For many years it worked. It was the envy of the world because it was paid for by TV licensing. Now that means that everybody paid, I think at the time it was about £30, so probably about $30. I don't know what it was when I was a kid. It was pretty cheap, and you pay this every year as a tax, and then you could watch whatever you wanted. Then ITV came along, independent television, and it was independent. They weren't paid for with TV licensing, they were paid for with advertising. So while the BBC had no advertising at all, ITV did. Now the difference between those two is that the BBC were free to make whatever they wanted so long as the people wanted to watch it. They were answerable to the UK public. They were their boss. And the stuff came out and it was aimed mostly at the mainstream audience. ITV changed all that by bringing in advertising. Now advertising means that ITV's bosses weren't the public anymore, they were the advertisers. The advertisers got to say what they wanted to do. So they had to put on television and movies that were more interesting, okay? So they had to get a wider audience because they were being paid for by the advertisers. So if the BBC were putting on, let's say, a documentary, ITV had to put on something more exciting to get more audience in there. So they might put on a football match, or they might put on the latest movie. Now they'd pay more for it. They'd buy the latest movie from Hollywood, and obviously after a couple of years of licensing, and they'd put it on at a key time to attract investors, to attract advertising people to come on and advertise their products during their slots. So every 20 minutes or so we'd have an advertising break and we'd get 4 or 5 minutes of television ads. And that became their boss. ITV was owned by the advertisers because that was their job. Now you could argue this two ways. Number one, capitalism works, and capitalism to a degree does work because it's following the market share. Now the advertisers might be the boss, they might dictate what ITV put on because they're the ones funding it, but the advertisers have to advertise to their audience. That means that they have to make sure that there's someone there who wants to watch what they're putting out. So yes, capitalism is pretty crass, but it ensures that something that the audience wants to see is going out. But the problem comes along when we go to the mass market. To make sure we've got the widest possible audience, we have to get the dumbest possible audience. So ITV got a reputation as putting on the dumber, the lower level, the simplistic stuff. So they were putting on juvenile comedies, they were putting on second-rate movies, they were putting on anything that they could buy and just throw it out there. Meanwhile, the BBC was supposedly focusing on quality. Quality doesn't sell, and they soon found that out. BBC was starting to cut the budgets, and because ITV had more money, because they were making more money, and the fact that they were making money meant they could make more money, so they started going with better quality programs, while the BBC was getting lower and lower budgets. The most obvious place to see this was children's programming. The BBC stuff was, by then, pretty awful. I mean, it was just a painted studio with some upturned boxes and actors who used to work in other things presenting ABC songs and really not enjoying doing it. And you could tell the difference. ITV stuff was just simply better. And this started to creep into all aspects of... sorry, it's quite noisy. It started to creep into all aspects of television programming. Then Channel 4 came along. Now Channel 4 was quite a big mover. They were an experimental channel, but they were independent. They didn't work for any of the other channels. We created a fourth channel, Channel 4. That was where it got its name from. And they were free to put on whatever they wanted. Now they couldn't compete with ITV because they were running at a lower budget, so they competed instead by making slightly eclectic stuff, weird stuff. So they had the late night adult stuff. So they were having more experimental comedies, they were having more dark movies, adult stuff that the other channels just wouldn't touch. The BBC weren't going to make it, ITV couldn't screen it, so Channel 4 started posting all the weird stuff, and they did pretty well out of it. I mean, they were making a lot of money. They weren't making as much as ITV, but they were certainly doing pretty well. And things went along as they were. Then Channel 4 made enough money to invest in movie channels, and they started building themselves up and did really well. Then it all exploded about 25 years ago when cable TV came in. Now, at the beginning, the BBC didn't really buy into it, but then they did, big time. And that really changed everything in England. Now, the BBC was always supposed to be funded by the British people for the British people. And we didn't mind because we had that quality. But then when cable came in, everything changed. Suddenly, there was like 7 different channels on the BBC and more on their way. Then there was the repeat channels. And all of them were advertised. So we were paying our taxes to get this quality service, but the advertisers were suddenly in charge. And now we started to see investment. The BBC was selling programs abroad because the advertisers were being attracted in, which meant money was being attracted out. And it all started to fall apart. The quality went down the toilet. BBC News used to be the best news broadcast in the world. Now it's owned by Sky. Now it's owned by Fox Media. Fox Media. People laugh at Fox Media, and quite rightly so. It's one of the worst news systems in the world. It's just propaganda. So the BBC became a mockery of itself, but we still kept charging the taxes. I believe they've, because it used to be a criminal offence to have a television and not have a licence. That's been decriminalised now in the UK, and I would imagine that we're going to get rid of the licence very, very soon, because people are sick of it. No one trusts the BBC, nobody watches the BBC, it's done. And with cable TV, we started to see a lot of people moving away from the traditional model of broadcast television. So instead of having radio waves sent to a television that can only pick up so many channels, now you can have as many channels as you like coming down a fibre optic cable, just like Wi-Fi. That's changed everything. Netflix came, all the other streaming services came, and who knows what the future is. But we've now expanded into a whole new thing. Network television is the way forward. We're networking all of our stuff together through the internet. And it's even worse than before. Advertisers now have complete control, and we've now moved on to the idea that advertising now needs to dictate what the program is. Before, we'd have creative people like me, who want to write something interesting because I love writing. I want to write because I want to be a writer, not because I have anything to say that I think people need to listen to, but because I enjoy doing it. That's all changed. Now, if you want to make television programs, you have to be a propagandist. You have to be using this as a platform to sell your political agenda. And the political agenda they're selling is always the same. You know what I'm talking about. It's the same old crap. It's coming in from England, it's coming in from America. It's like a cancer eating up through Europe as well. And I'm sure that you're getting it even out here through the TV. And people have lost respect for the television. People have lost respect for the whole broadcast industry. People don't trust it anymore. People aren't interested in it anymore, and it's become irrelevant. These people don't speak for us. Today there was a news article about, do you know, I can't remember her bloody name now. Nope, can't remember her name. But she's a Hollywood actress, famous for marrying a pop star. Then she was in the Iron Man. She played Iron Man's wife, girlfriend. Gwen's, I can't remember. Now she's gone on record as saying things got so bad during the lockdown that she ate bread. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? These people are so out of touch with reality that they're talking about having to eat food during a lockdown that has reduced the American economy to tatters, that has left millions of people without jobs, people without homes, people who have now no chance of ever getting back to work. People have lost their entire lives over this lockdown, and she's complaining about once having to eat bread. This is how irrelevant these people have become, and this is why people wholesale are turning against them. People are looking now towards independent creatives, and that's the up-and-coming thing. But of course, fox and hounds economics. As something comes up, something else goes down. Fox and hound economics is that when we have a lot of fox and rabbits. When we get a lot of rabbits, the rabbits are free to run around, but then they attract the foxes. They eat all the rabbits. And then when all the rabbits are gone, there can be less foxes because there's nothing to eat. When there's less foxes, there's more rabbits. Now, if TV does die off and independent creators come up, we just see more advertisers go towards the independent creatives, and that takes all of the interest away from independent creativity. And we're seeing this now right away. YouTube, for instance. YouTube punishes you if you talk about anything anti-woke. If you post something anti-woke, you're not going to make any money. They defund your platform. If you do anything they don't like, they defund your platform. If you speak about anything they don't like, you can't even mention COVID, they defund your platform. So you lose all your money. You can't make any money on YouTube. You can still make videos and they will still advertise on it, but you're not allowed to make money out of it unless you toe the line. Now they're talking about sponsoring channels if they say the right thing. So they're going to give them an agenda. And of course, these creative people need to eat. So they're going to start making content that supports the mainstream propaganda view. So in other words, they've got it down so that you, as an audience, are paying for our creatives to make propaganda to propagandize to you. So you're paying to be conditioned by people who have no choice but to make propaganda to condition you. It's a terrible system, but it's working and it's the way forward. So television, should it be on or off? And that has to be a personal thing. Like everything else, television of itself is not that terrible. But it's when we watch too much of it, and it's when we believe it too much. Take Japan. I've never been to Japan, but I'm told from people who live there that the prevailing attitude in Japan is that people understand that television and media is simply make-believe. The news is very, very regulated. Apparently it's incredibly boring, but it's incredibly accurate. And things like anime, no one takes it seriously. No one thinks this is how the world really is, so they're allowed to do whatever they want. They can be as creative as they like because people accept it for what it is. And there's no political pandering, there's no political agendarizing. People are making stories for the sake of making stories. They're doing it for the art. And that works. But we're not seeing that in Hollywood, and we're certainly not seeing it in England. So what do we do for the future? What are you going to do? You've got to be utterly responsible in the same way as everything else. You've got to be completely responsible for your own consumption. Nobody's going to do it for you. And you've got to be very suspicious of every single thing you see on YouTube, on television, in the movies, and you've got to decide for yourself what you're going to consume and how much of it you're going to watch. Now, I've made plenty of videos in my house. You'll notice there's no television, and there's a very good reason for that. I never had one in England either. I don't believe in television. I choose not to have one on. I watch occasional YouTube videos, and overwhelmingly the YouTube creators now are moaning about the platform, and I would be very, very surprised if we don't see a new platform by the end of the year. There is a rumor that Donald Trump is using his wealth to create a new free independent platform. They reckon that within 3 years there's going to be a new independent internet that doesn't trace and track anybody. Of course, it will end up being corrupted sooner or later. And they're talking a lot about the idea that this is going to change again so that we've got more freedom, more privacy, And so independent creators can be rewarded for the creation that they do in terms of appreciation from the audience rather than having the advertisers control it. The problem always comes when money controls it. As soon as it does, everything starts to fall apart. It's a cancer, and it always has been. So television, on or off? Television can have its benefits, but do they outweigh the negative sides? And the only person that can decide that for you is you. But what kind of person are you? Think about that. Are you the kind of person that's going to passively switch off your brain and endlessly consume television, movies, media, play games all day? Because if you do, and you're not doing anything for yourself, then you're going to fall into this trap even faster. And look at the situation around us. We've got this endless lockdown based on fear and media propaganda, and people have bought into it wholesale. Have you? You decide. What do you believe? Make sure that you believe what you've found out about for yourself, and not what other people have told you to believe. They're the people that win. And this is just a small part of the things I've been talking about. This is happening all around the world, and believe me, it's going to get worse. All through your life. We'll see. So television, on or off? Up to you. Okay, television, should it be on or off? Sorry, off or on. Television has been part of family life for over 50 years now. There would not be many households in the developed world that do not have at least one television set. There is mine. Many households in developing countries now have television. Better or worse. Some say it brings all people in the world closer together because we can see what is happening in all parts of the world. For example, we can see when a country has suffered from a natural disaster, such as an earthquake or a flood, or we can see the festivals of certain cultures or nations. This helps us to have a better understanding of the similarities and differences of countries and cultures. In addition, television can be a valuable educational tool. It can open children's minds to cultures and countries other than their own. Children can also learn from programs that encourage increased knowledge and creativity. But on the other hand, some of these images can be confusing and harmful if they're seen by those who are too young to understand them. Some programs only provide information from one point of view. If other points of view are not presented, then it can lead to prejudices or misunderstandings. So I think we can see where this article is going. Straight away, it gives a brief introduction and then goes to the positive side. Be wary of these sort of things. Television changes family life. Television has changed the way families interact. Before television, families sat around the dinner table at night to discuss and share the events of the day. Whereas now, many families eat in front of the television, and any sharing of thoughts and ideas are reduced to almost nil. It is as if there are individuals sitting together, but they have no social interaction at all. And this was written before everybody had smartphones. This means that children are not learning the social skills of eating together and the cultural importance of traditions. Some children are spending up to 6 hours a day in front of the television. A recent university found that spending too much time watching television results in more time for eating snacks, and so leads to overeating. Young people are becoming more unfit and overweight. Young people today are 15 to 20% less fit than their parents at the same age. True. Obesity among adolescents has trebled over the past 15 years. Alternatively, families who watch less television tend to do more activities together. They play more sport and become involved in cultural and social activities. The parents know that their children are doing, know what their children are doing and what they're interested in. Everyone is enriching their lives by interacting with different people and so making friends outside the family unit and then shooting them in video games. Parents are involved so they can see straight away if something is wrong and help to fix the problem before it worsens. At the same time, there are families that enjoy watching special programs together. They choose what they want to watch based on the interests of the family members. Then they make a point of discussing what they've seen and how it relates to them, and what they already know. This can be an opportunity for families to build close bonds as they use television programs as part of their family discussions about what is important and what they believe. Nevertheless, there are some families that do have more than one television. In these cases, the family often does not even sit together to watch television. There can be little sharing of ideas at all when individuals are not interested in nor want to know what the others are watching. If parents do not know what young children are watching, they cannot check if their children are watching any disturbing or inappropriate material. The art of conversation is completely neglected. If children do not become familiar and comfortable with holding a conversation, they're likely to become antisocial and uncommunicative as adults. Television provides a wonderful source of information and general knowledge. A huge selection of science programs, nature documentaries, quiz shows and lifestyle programs ensure a variety of interesting topics that children and adults can learn about. That's certainly true, but those do not attract the audience. News and current affairs programs provide us with up-to-date and comprehensive information as well as pictures about events around the world. From these programs, our knowledge and understanding grows. Does it? We can develop opinions on topics based on facts rather than opinions. News and current affairs programs show us what is happening around the world. This is history in the making. The people and the events of today will be in the in the books of tomorrow. Cultural programs such as music, dance and art programs teach us about our own cultural heritage and that of other countries. Unfortunately, television brings information that can also be disturbing or confusing. Yeah, K-drama. Many people cannot tell the difference between what is fact and what is opinion or a biased view. Well, hopefully you all can, because I've spent enough time teaching you that. Television advertisements convince credulous viewers that they will only be happy if they own the product advertised, and that the happiest people are those who are young, rich and good looking. I'm sure that's not true at all. The violence seen on the news and current affairs programs mixed with cartoons can be very disconcerting. Viewers lose touch with what is real and what is acting and imaginary. If violence is seen as entertainment, it can be interpreted as fun. This leads to extremely dangerous behavior. In conclusion, television has become a part of our lives. We need to recognize the strengths of television and how it can enrich people's lives. However, we also need to recognize the negative effects of watching television and make sure any damage it can cause is reduced to a minimum. We must be selective about what we watch and think carefully about the messages we receive. Television can be a wonderful source of education, information and entertainment. However, it must be monitored carefully to ensure the gains are positive. Actually, I mostly agree with that. It is a divisive topic. And let's think about this in terms of it, talking about media in general. Movies, television, streaming services, entertainment channels such as social media. These things are divisive. How many of you think you could actually live without social media, without YouTube, without internet, without television? It's like giving up anything else, because it honestly does become an addiction. It is like giving up. You would go through withdrawal, you'd feel pretty awful at first, and then you'd settle in, and you probably would be better off, you would. If we could go back to reading books, get some proper libraries, share our books freely, we would all be better off. But it isn't going to happen. And it isn't going to happen because there's no money in it and there's no value in it. If we took off the media, people would be happy, people would be thinking, people would be socializing, and people would be very, very difficult to control. Think about that.